In this video, I'm going to go over 6 types of sentences that are available in Louisiana. And again, these will take place whether someone has been adjudicated guilty because they've pled guilty or pled no contest, or they're found guilty at trial, okay? The first type of sentence is fine only. Not every sentence requires a jail sentence, especially some misdemeanors are just fine only, and there's no jail sentence possible. But some felonies give the judge the option to impose jail or fine or both. So it's theoretically possible for some cases you can get just a fine. On the other extreme is jail only. First degree murder, you're either going to get life or death. Second degree murder, life. That's it, okay? And there are some other crimes like armed robbery, you can't get probation. So whatever it is you get is jail. Okay, so you have a jail only fine. Now in between those two extremes, there's a couple other options that are available. One, and this is most common for misdemeanors and non-violent crimes by people with small or no existing criminal record, is probation. And what probation is an acknowledgement that the judge is empowered to sentence you to jail for a period of time. But you will enter into an agreement with the court that if you do certain things over the course of a certain period of time, then you will be allowed to stay out, live at home, work, live an otherwise normal life outside of these obligations that are imposed upon you. And if you do that, you're going to be put on probation, you're going to stay out of jail, and as a period of time passes, you'll be released, okay? So the two main conditions are don't get arrested for anything else, and also avoid drugs. So can't commit a criminal act is really what those two boil down to. But you'll also see things like pay a fine, pay court costs, do some community service, take some rehabilitation classes, maintain full employment, or go to school. Those are your common probationary terms. Now there's some people who are not eligible for probation, or the seriousness of their particular conduct or their background on a particular case makes probating them either against the law or just not a good way to met out justice. They can be put on what's called home incarceration. Generally, this is reserved for nonviolent crimes, not necessarily people that are nonviolent. And with home incarceration, you are literally confined to the 4 walls of your home, subject to certain specified conditions by the court. Your common ones are job, and any other conditions imposed upon the court. Sometimes people in home incarceration can't go to church. Definitely people who are incarcerated can't go to kids' birthday parties or baseball games. Those are all prohibited. You are literally serving your sentence at home. But after that period is done, you're released from home incarceration, you can go back to leading a normal law-abiding life. The 5th type of sentence is what's called a split sentence. And this is going to be a combination of things. Normally you'll see it as a combination of jail and probation. I'm going to sentence you to 10 years jail. I'm going to suspend all but 2, okay? Then I'm going to put you on probation for a few years. Why does this happen? Well, some sentences have a mandatory minimum where you have to go to jail for a certain period of time. You can also split sentences. Instead of putting people on probation, put them on home incarceration. So I'm going to sentence you to jail and put you on home incarceration after you get out. I actually have one client who has a split sentence that required some jail, some home incarceration, and some probation. So it's just stacking these things together, and that normally is where a good plea bargaining takes place, all right? And the 6th thing that I want to talk about is it's a type of sentence. It's a bit of a hybrid. It's called a habitual offender adjudication. If anyone that's convicted of a felony, if they've been convicted of a prior felony within the past 10 years, they can be subject to the habitual offender law. And basically what this is it will require them to go to jail. It would eliminate them from earning good time credits while in jail, so they'll do jail day for day. And it establishes a mandatory minimum penalty even when none existed. It will also increase the potential maximum penalty, okay? So it really expands out the potential penalty range. And again, it requires jail. Now, the minimum imposed and the maximum imposed are going to be dependent upon 2 factors. The first is the actual sentence possibility for what you're convicted of. You know, the more serious the crime, the bigger the ranges, which means you have a bigger minimum and a bigger maximum. In general, the ceiling and the floor of the habitual offender statute is dependent upon the maximum penalty for what you're convicted. Again, the second factor to consider is the number of convictions. People with more underlying convictions used against them tend to have a higher mandatory minimum sentence to serve. So those are 6 types of sentences you'll see in Louisiana. In Louisiana, there are 4 different ways that you can post bond. What a bond is, it's a surrendering of some type of property or assurance that would allow someone to be released from jail and go to court while their case is pending. The easiest way to make a bond is by posting a cash bond. Someone is arrested, the judge looks at the seriousness of the charge, looks at their criminal history, and then says, I'm going to set a bond in the amount of $10,000. Well, if the person or someone on their behalf wants to pay that, they can take $10,000, go deposit it with the sheriff, and then the person will be released. So long as the person comes to court, when the case is over, regardless of the outcome of the case, the person or his family will get the $10,000 back. Now, if they do not appear in court, then they will forfeit the $10,000. The second type of way to get someone out of jail is with a property bond. And so this is where someone pledges home or land as collateral for the bond. Now, the property has to be located in Louisiana because the court has to have jurisdiction over the land. And you can stack up multiple pieces of property to satisfy the bond, but this is how it works. You look at what you pay in property taxes, you look at your assessed value. You take from that assessed value, you subtract any liens. Generally, that's a mortgage or a second mortgage. And then that difference is what is available to post a bond. Again, you can stack up multiple pieces of property if you need to. It only costs a couple $100 to file a lien in the court record and a couple $100 to remove it. So it's pretty cheap, and as long as you think the person is going to show up for court, you really don't have anything to worry about. The third type, and it's probably the most desired, is a sign-out bond. This is a release on your own recognizance or release from a personal surety, someone who says, I will make sure they go to court. This is basically the honor system. As long as the person goes to court, no one really has to pay any money other than like a $30 or $40 processing fee with the sheriff's office. But if someone doesn't show up to court, then whoever is the surety, whether it's the defendant himself or his mom or his dad or his wife, will then be personally obligated for the entire bail amount, and then can have liens placed on their property, wages garnished, what have you. That is not reserved for every type of bond. It's generally for nonviolent crimes or misdemeanors and generally reserved for first offenders. Now, the most common bond is the commercial bond. That is where you go and actually pay a bail bondsman to post a bond for you. What you do, the state law of Louisiana says you have to pay 12% to a commercial bail bondsman. They can't charge 14%, they can't charge 10%. It's 12%. 2% goes to the bail bondsman. The other 10% goes to execute an insurance contract with the sheriff that posts your bond. You, as long as you appear in court, you don't owe any other money. If you do not appear, then the court can move against the bail bond company's insurance underwriters for the full bond amount, and you have signed over documents that allow the bail bonds company to go after you to indemnify them for the loss in its entirety. Now, the downside is that when the case is over, you don't get any of your money back. But it is the most common way to get people out of jail, because people do get arrested for serious crimes or are repeat offenders, and they tend not to have property or cash to satisfy large bond amounts. So the bail bondsman can work. Those are the 4 ways to post bond in Louisiana. Bail bondsmen work 24/7. Property bonds are done during normal court hours. Personal recognizance or cash bond can be done any time of the day.